You are watching Toon Matrix. Spoilers ahead, watch out.
The story starts at the harbor city Lilith. The all-overpowered bird uses shadow clone jutsu and attacks the two ship coming from ahead.
Kidding.
The story starts at the harbor city Lilith. A man says, "I am finally here." The merchants are selling their merchandise to people around coming off the boat. The man's eyes shines with excitement. Then another man asks him, "Are you that happy?" We came to know his name is Raymond and the other man's name is Walker. Then a man named Taryn says, "Honestly, I want to run around from all the joy too." A girl is also standing beside him. They all are in party with Raymond. Then Taryn, while looking up, says, "This is where our adventure begins." Then we are briefed about the world. This is the era of adventures. Adventurers from all over the world begin their own journey to become renowned heroes. Gate. One day they began to open all over the world. Beyond these mysterious portals were all kind of horrifying creatures that can't be seen in normal world. Many adventurers died inside the gate, but the unimaginable treasures that lay inside lured the adventurers in. Walker says, "We need a bait." Raymond wonders what is he talking about. Then Walker tells them that we don't know what lies inside the gate. Countless adventurers died because of unexpected variables. And that is why we need a slave to act as bait. The girl agrees with Walker and says that's a good plan. Then the party went to a slave market. A man says, "All the guys here are meant to be bait," and asks them to pick a one to their liking. The man recommends a duo as they are in pretty good shape. Walker says he will take them both. The man wishes them good luck on their adventure. In front of the gate, Walker says, "We will mark the outside to notify anyone else that they are already inside." He sees that there is no marking outside the gate, and with a smile on his face says, "It seems we are the first one to go inside," and says, "Let's head in." After entering the gate, Raymond says, "I feel strange," but his eyes are filled with awe at the sight of the forest full of mushroom-like plants. Raymond exclaims, "I have never been to a place like this. It is totally different from what he had imagined." Walker tells them not to be nervous, since the gates are away from the monsters, so they are safe for now. He says they can't use the same gate for leaving, so they have to find the exit gate first. The girl notices something, and sees a spider-like monster behind her. It takes a bite out of her like a KFC chicken, and the rest screams and started running away. We came to know her name was Charlotte. But she is now a half-eaten leg piece. What a shame. They see that they are surrounded by monsters, and then Walker readies his staff and begins to cast fire arrow, and shots it at monsters to keep them away from Charlotte. Walker tells them that something is wrong and orders the party to tie the slave to a tree, and they need to get out now. One of the slaves asks to take them too. Taryn takes out his knife and says to stay put. Raymond apologizes and ties them to a tree, and they all begin to run away. One of the slaves gets instantly killed, and the other got attacked too. Walker's party manages to get away. Walker, while carrying Charlotte's body, says, "We don't have to clear it, we just need to escape." Raymond gets terrified. Walker asks Raymond to get a hold of yourself. Taryn then grabs his collar, saying to listen to what Walker says. Taryn asks him to calm down and says they can always try again. He confidently says that they all will make out of here, but he gets crushed by a monster. Walker screams, "But my man has already become a human pie." Raymond falls to the ground while panicking. Walker casts another fire arrow, but the monster shoots his tongue at him and wraps it around his neck, then pulls Walker into his mouth. All we can hear is munching of the monster. Raymond gets terrified and starts to run away, but he falls down. The monster slowly walks up to him and takes a bite out of his leg. Raymond screams about his leg, and then sees one of the slaves standing on the tree. He says he is glad that he is alive and asks to help him. Raymond says all his party members are dead and only they two remain. He apologizes about earlier, and asks the slave to get him out of here alive. Raymond pleads while gritting his teeth. The man says nothing. Raymond begs to help him and stops standing there. The man smiles and then jumps down the tree. He says, "I can't help now as it's too late." We see Raymond is devoured for the most of his part. Raymond sees his reflection in the pool of his own blood and laughs while cursing at him. Raymond, while crying, asks if the slave thinks he will be able to escape because he is next. Then he gets fully eaten by the monster, leaving only his hand behind. The man readies his staff. The monster is ready too. The monster leaps off to attack the man. The man says he won't die here and stabs a hole through the monster, instantly killing it. The man says, "Where he died wasn't a place like this," and then he makes a badass pose. We get flashback where a man is looking off the cliff at the destruction below. Someone says it's coming, and we see winged creatures flying towards them. Among them is a giant beast, the king of dragons, Gorntail. A woman says, "I guess the centaur's nest has fallen, and there is nothing we can do as everyone else is dead." The knights, the adventurers, and even the 6 heroes who were ray of hope to the people are gone. The woman tells a man that he is the last remaining adventurer and calls the man by his name, Paume. Paume says let's go as this is their last adventure, and we see Gornhail directly flying towards them. We don't get to see the action and are brought to hellish landscape with Paume covered in blood and all of his comrades lying dead on the ground. But Gornhail's head was also lying on the ground. Paume wonders if it is over, but we see Gorntail has 3 heads and only lost one of them, but it didn't matter, since that also begin to regenerate. Gornhail flies towards Paume to attack him. Paume closes his eyes accepting his fate, but he hits the ground with frustration, saying he cannot accept an ending like this. He says, Philip, Jaden, Alexis too. Everyone sacrificed themselves. He screams with frustration and then stands up. He says this is not how this story ends. Using his magic, he prepares a final attack for Gornhail and something big starts forming above his head. Suddenly his magic stops working and he coughs up blood due to the backlash for using too much magic. We see one of Gornhail's head preparing an attack. He fires it towards Paume. Paume curses while the attack hits him and then it fades to black. Paume says how did it end like this? If only I were more powerful, if I had just one more chance. Then Paume jolts his eyes open upon being splashed by water. He is surprised as a man says, a slave should know his place. Paume wonders what happened to Gornhail, and after a moment of realization, he recognizes this place. Several other slaves are lined up against a wall with him. He says it's the slave market. He was surprised as this place was demolished a long time ago. But he recognizes the merchant as the one who was in charge of him 6 years ago. He wonders why he is here and pieces it together, but the merchant hates that Paume is staring at him and he punches Paume in the face. Paume sits there wondering if he is dreaming of the past, but says it's too realistic to be a dream. He can't believe it, but there is no other explanation. We see Walker and his party in the slave market and he buys 2 slaves. Paume decides to not let this second chance go to waste. The flashback ends and we are brought to where Walker and his team died. Paume picks up Walker's staff and says Fireball isn't too bad of a skill and it's perfect for my level right now, but this isn't enough, an adventurer should have more than one weapon. Then he sees Walker's foot and takes it off saying people hide valuable items in their shoes. Paume finds a ring and wears it. He came to know it's a telekinesis ring. He hears stomping in the forest and sees a horde of monsters around him. He wonders if they smell the blood and then the monsters lunges at him. He quickly puts a hole in one of the monster. Then one of the monster tries to tongue attack at him, and wraps it around the staff breaking it into pieces. Paume gets surprised and using this chance one of the monster tries to attack him from behind, but Paume uses fire arrow and instantly kills it. He says he will test the ring too, and then controls the fire arrow using the ring, piercing several monsters at once setting them ablaze and killing them. He says he can't keep it up for long but it doesn't matter, then he's shocked that fire arrow is not working anymore. He says it's not broken, so maybe it's on cooldown. One more monster begin to attack at him, but Paume uses the staff itself pummeling the monster and kicks him in the face making it fall to the ground. He wonders if the staff is ready, then it began to power up again, multiple monster begin to attack him. Paume uses the fire arrow and uses the ring to control the arrow piercing and killing all the monsters at once. He looks down at their corpses, then we hear Charlotte calling up to him. She says he is no ordinary slave. Paume is surprised to see she is alive, and so is your narrator to see her alive. The MC says, she got lucky. She asks who is he? Why does he have Walker's staff, and about the mark on his wrist, asking how he awakened despite being a slave. After seeing around she realizes that everyone is dead and asks if it was all his plan. Paume intensely glares at her and asks if she is done yapping. He says that she is wrong, and this wasn't his plan, and even if it was he would have killed them anyway. She asks why. While casting fire arrow he replies that, I absolutely despises people who uses slaves as bait. The scene shifts to Lilith City. People while looking at Paume are talking about how a bait slave returned alone. Paume says he have to hurry, so he can avoid repeating the same fate. Then he stands in front of a building, saying his first goal is to free himself. We hear someone asking about slave returning alive. A man says that's right Mr. Abby's, and he returned without any injuries. Abby's asks, what's wrong with returning alive? It's not unlikely for some bait to return safe and sound. The man replies that all of the adventurers accompanying him died inside the gate. Abby says that's surprising, considering he didn't run away, and came back on his own 2 feet. He says people who have been reduced to slave due to their debt will end up being a bait again, even if they return alive, and he returned despite knowing this fact, which means he is well aware that he can't get out of our grasp and death is the only escape. because that is the way of Gaffer Merchant Union after all. He asks, why do I have to be reported of such trivial matter? The man replies, there is one more event to report, and that is the bait has awakened his first circle. Abby's was shocked to hear this news, and says a bait is now a one circle, you say. He says to himself a slave could harbor negative thoughts towards the union, and things could go wrong. The man then says that Paume is asking for a change in contract, and he would like to be registered as an adventurer. Abby says a slave should know their place, but the man replies that Rakan has ordered him to look into this matter personally. After hearing the name Rakan, Abby's jumps out of his seat. I thought he got piles issues. Abby's wonders why an executive of the union is showing interest in a lowly slave, then he looks at a book lying on the table and wonders if it's because of that. Then the man leaves the room. Abby thinks about the matter while standing near the window. More world lore, we came to know that under the name of Queen Cygnus, the status of slave can exist. But this is nothing more than a superficial talk, as people have always been slave to Meso, a currency of Maple World. And if people fail to pay back what they owe, so they have to pay it back through labor. The day Paume's father died due to an illness, he ended up becoming a slave as well. He purchased a herb called black moss from the merchant union, and they jacked up the prices. And due to him failing to pay the amount back, he was deemed by court to work as a laborer equal to the amount he owes, and was exploited for 6 years by the union. Now it's time for his revenge. He introduces himself as El Paume to Abby's. Paume recognizes Abby's from his past life as Rakan's left hand, and says he caught a good fish. Abby says he already received the report, so I will keep it short, and puts down his drink on the table. Abby says that he will modify his contract to that of F-rank adventurer. Paume says thank you for accepting it, however I would like E rank. Abby says that the association hasn't even assigned you a rank. Paume replies he had explored hundreds of gates over past 3 years as the baiting slave. Abby says, exactly, as a baiting slave, and you have never caught a monster. Then Paume asks why is monster hunting is a virtue for being an adventurer. The reason the first adventurer can make a name for himself was due to survival, and says that the virtue of an adventurer is returning alive from the gate. Abby's admits that it's true. He says surviving as a bait slave for 3 years is no ordinary feat, but it's only in low-ranking gates. He asks if his pathetic survival skill will work in higher gates, and says he is taking the union for idiots who'd offer risky contract to someone who'll die without paying them back. He takes out a cigar and lights it. He says to himself that our MC thinks he is all high and mighty, and he wouldn't be able to go far. But Abby's wonders what this repulsive feeling he is getting from our MC is. He tells Paume that there is a gate where only 5 can enter and it has 12 marks. He laughs and says yes, there have 12 parties whose bones are buried inside that gate. He says to Paume to prove your worth, and if you prove it, Abby's with a smirk on his face says I'll do whatever you want.
Honey, you've got a big storm coming.
We see a party Paume's going with. One of them introduces himself as Chev, and says he is the tank of this party. Chev says that I have heard about you being a bait slave, but I don't care about stuff like that, and the same goes for the party. Paume says, I hope we have good time working together. Then one of them says that I heard he can use magic, and asks which elemental magic he can use. Chev says, I heard mages can only use the element they are born with, and any item that is unrelated to their element is useless to them, and asks if he's heard about that. Then Chev says enough chit-chat. You must have already heard that the goal of this mission is not clear the gate, but to safely retrieve the items of previous parties that died inside the gate. If they return it to the Union, they will get 3,000 meso per item. Then one of the party members sighs and says, the Union is being cheap, 3,000 meso isn't even half to of what it amounts. Another member asks him to stop complaining, they both argue with each other. Then Chev says time to make some money, and they head inside the gate. Chev asks them to pay attention as there is a high chances of long battle, so they must set up a base first. One of them suggests to make it above the tree. Chev agrees to it. We see them preparing material needed to set up base, then the dark guy says to Paume to just rest, as setting up base is their speciality. They quickly built their base and decided to split up to search the surroundings. We came to know the rest of party member names. Tom, Max, and Roa are in one team and Chev and Paume are in one team. Chev says they'll go in opposite direction, and if something happens, send a signal and rush back to the base, and then they head out. After a while Chev wonders why they've not run into any monster, let alone an item. He then asks Paume how his first mission as an adventurer looking. Paume replies, "I am nervous." Chev laughs and says that's how it is, and says I have been adventurer for a long time yet, I am still nervous as I have always been a scaredy cat. He says despite that I have courage to go inside a gate, because I trust my party members, and tells how they are very good people. He says he felt bad after hearing Paume's story about being a bait slave, and invites Paume to join his party. When Chev turns back, he sees Paume is staring at something. The scene shifts at night time where all the party members are having dinner sitting around a campfire, and talking among themselves. Paume is drinking from his water bottle. Then it jumps to later night. Chev approaches Paume asking if he is sleeping, but Paume doesn't answer him. Max asks Chev, "What are you doing?" And then takes out his blade, menacingly saying how could he reply as he is lost in his dreams. He says you are too cautious, did you forget what they have mixed in his food, and says he gulped down so much, he'd be lucky to not die. One of them says a fire arrow wand will cost around 10,000 meso. Max menacingly laughs, and while raising the dagger, he says, "It's time to get to work." He stabs into the sleeping bag, and realizes it feels weird. Then it is revealed that Paume is not there.
Turn the fasten seatbelt sign back on because shit is about to get real.
They all freaked out after knowing that Paume is missing. Chev shouts to find him, and says he couldn't have gotten far. Suddenly an explosion hits their base, engulfing it in fire. Tom asks about the sudden fire and shouts to take out their food items first. Chev wonders if it is Paume's doing. Then Tom points at something, and the party is greeted by a slimy creature with a giant eyeball. Chev gets terrified as he realizes that they have been used as a bait by Paume. They jump off their base, as it gets munched on by the slimy creature. Paume watches them from a tree, saying they are lacking. If they wanted to trick me, then they shouldn't have been so kind. In a gate where 12 party died, they accepted a bait slave. It was obvious that they were up to something. Anyways, I had an inkling that this slime was the boss monster after seeing the broken parts, but it's larger than I thought. It continues chasing after them through the woods. Tom then asks Chev what is that monster. Chev briefs, that is a rare monster called gold slime, that comes out in only red gates. Its body is made of acid, so it's worst match for melee adventurers like us, and the most dangerous part is, then he sees an attack and pushes Tom out of the way. Tom asks what it was, and Chev tells him that it was acid arrow, a long-range attack, one of the monster's skill. Tom, while panicking, says it's cheating. Chev tells him to get a hold of yourself and get to running. His party asks how to defeat the monster. Chev replies they have to attack at the monster's core, which is its only weakness, but tells them to get to a safe place first, as its acid arrow is on 1 minute cooldown. After hearing about the cooldown, Max rushes back to attack the monster, saying they have enough time. He leaps off at the monster, saying to leave everything to me. Chev tries to stop him, but it's too late because Max is already split in half by the boss monster. Chev got confused and says it should have more time to its cooldown. The monster fires another acid arrow, turning everyone to bones. Paume was standing behind a tree hiding from the monster. He says, "It looks like it's over," and Chev wasn't wrong. But a gold slime gets stronger by eating items, and that is why the cooldown decreased too. Paume says, "Now I understand why all the parties before failed the mission. The monster has grown so much that it can belong to Yellow Gate, which is 2 levels above the Red Gate. It's already out of league of first-class circle adventurers." He says, "It looks like this mission is a failure since there are no objects left to retrieve in this dungeon." Then he remembers Abby's words and gives a slight smile. We see the adorable slime slugging its way through the woods, then it notices something, and suddenly half of its head splits open by a surprise attack. Its goo starts melting the ground and it screeches while regenerating. Paume says, "I am sure that I aimed for the core," and compliments the slime for surviving the attack. He says if it's like this he will need 4 more, no 5 more attacks will be enough. He says it doesn't matter, and with a smile on his face says, "I will just prove my worth." The slime fires its acid arrow at him, but he dodges it by jumping off the tree. Then the boss simultaneously fires several acid arrow and he evades all of them. Paume uses his telekinesis ring to control the dagger and says, "I have to hit the same spot without missing." An ordinary mage wouldn't do this, but you guys know he is the main character, and one of his past life's title was the best telekinetic. He casts a fire arrow and hits the boss. He says 4 more to go. The monster fires another acid arrow. He evades it by climbing up a tree and swinging like a Tarzan. Paume, while swinging, casts another fire arrow and says 3 more to go. The boss fires an onslaught at Paume, but he skillfully evades them all and then casts another fire arrow, now to left. He pulls himself to tree and launches a fire arrow at the slime, but it dodges it this time. Paume says it's pretty quick for its size, but it's pointless. He activates his ring and controls the fire arrow and guides it back to the boss, hitting it at the right spot. Now the monster's core is exposed. Paume swings towards the core and says time for the last one, but we see the slime grows an arm trying to stop him. Paume notices it and activates his ring. He throws the dagger on the ground. Using the momentum of the dagger, he pulls himself away from the attack, then stops himself while casting the fire arrow and launches it at the boss. The boss puts his hand in front to block the attack. Paume smiles, and with the help of ring, he changes the arrow's course under his hand, striking directly at the core, causing it to glow brightly. The boss begins to grow larger in size and it explodes with a boom. As its acid begins to flood the area, Paume runs away from it. He uses his ring on the dagger, launching it towards a tree. It wraps around the tree and Paume quickly evades the acid and lands on the tree. Then Paume smirks since he is the emerging winner of this battlefield. The forest gets destroyed, but eventually the acid subsides. Paume comes down the tree and started inspecting the area, then he notices a shining object in the dust. He pulls the object towards him using the telekinesis ring. We see that it's a little red orb. It begins to glow in his hand, then it starts to emit a red aura and a red circle forms around him. It shifts to where Abby's and Paume are sitting. Paume says, "I am back." Abby's glares at him and then says that you were not just a big talker. He asks why is he back alone, and without any item. Paume replies that the party was just newbie hunters, so he left them. Then they encountered the boss monster and they died. Abby's asks what monster. Then he gets shocked upon knowing that it was a gold slime, since Abby's knew it was an acidic monster. Paume confirms his doubt that all the items melted away. Abby's grits his teeth with frustration because it was a fatty loss for the merchant union, and it is a problem that only Paume returned alive from that gate. We are briefed about the common rules of the gates. First is that only limited people can enter a gate, and nobody else can enter it until they all die. Second is that there are entrance limitations based on gate's difficulty and circle level. The difficulty color ranges from red to purple, and those with higher circles than gate difficulty level cannot enter. Third, there is only one entrance to gate, and if people survive the gate, it cannot be entered again and breaks. Abby says that a gold slime must have been too much for a first circle and he understands that why he couldn't retrieve the items. But regardless of the reason, Paume failed the mission. Paume, while taking off his wrist brace, replies that I didn't explain the situation properly. Abby's was confused, then he shows his wrist which have 2 circles glowing, and while smirking says, I ate the slime. Abby's gets shocked after seeing it, and asks if he absorbed the mana stone of the slime. Paume says, this should be enough to prove himself and asks to give him a rank now. Abby's jumps of his seat, I seriously think he got piles issues. Abby's with a joyful expression says that he will give him D rank, but if Paume works with him he will treat Paume as a C rank adventurer. Paume quickly signs the contract. Abby's kindly explains to us readers that, giving an adventurer C rank who is not 3rd circle is excessive treatment, since adventurer ranks are heavily influenced by circles. But our MC is built different and you can't level up just by consuming mana stones. Did he say survival instincts? Abby's, while smiling nervously, says, he has that survival instinct, no, an overwhelming talent. He had never seen this speed before. He smiles all giddy and says I need him. Paume sighs and says he seems pretty impatient. Well, there is not much time left until the Red Gate's first 100-man gate appears, and all of the big unions and guilds will be watching it. Paume puts down the pen on the table and says, there is no harm in advancing my plans since he is also in a rush. Paume tells Abby's that he has a favor to ask. Abby's replies to ask for it comfortably. Paume holds his hands out, saying to lend him some money. Abby smiles, but internally says he is going too far. The panel changes in more lore. Some people say that the gate started the era of adventurers, but it was all a trap of black magician. Many adventurers died in the gates, killing future potential of the Maple World. The last day that came after was when all the monsters came rushing through the gates and we lost. Exactly 3 years from now is when the Maple World face its fate. The panel changes back to Abby smoking, and he is watching Paume leave the Union. Paume says this much isn't enough, but it should be good enough to get started. The 100-member gate that will appear is red level, so only those with 2 circle can enter it. Usually the Union picks high-level adventurers, and the reason they are investing in him because they are surely aiming for the gate. Paume says, while I have obtained some money, spending it all on the items would be foolish, since the items for my level are expensive. He has an idea to buy something useful. Then we see him enter an area, whose name is written in Maple language. A man welcomes him to the slave market and asks what kind of companion is he looking for, a bait, or a warrior to fight alongside. Paume says, I have someone in mind, and asks the man to lead the way. The man was surprised but guides him. He says that this is punishment area and it's for those who act up. They stops in front of a cage. The man, while nervously gulping, asks if he is sure he wants this guy, and warns him. Paume says he is sure as this was the guy he was looking for. Paume explains that before his regression how a death of certain someone sped up the end of the Maple World. The polearm hero named Aaron, she was killed. Her first and last student was this man, hero killer, Debo. Debo questioningly says, you came for me? He rudely says that I don't know you, so get lost. The slave handler apologizes for his behavior. Paume thinks that Debo is indeed very rude. The handler sighs and says that Debo is the only crazy one here. Paume smiles, saying that, after the last day, Debo was one of the only few people who got recognition alongside him. They were often compared since they were from the same region, awakened around same time, with similar skills too, but they have a bigger similarity. Paume asks how much does he cost? Debo asks if he even can afford it, and while grinning he says, 1 million meso. The similarity was that they both were desperate for money. Debo had a younger sister, who was infected from black blood disease. Debo tells him to get lost, if he can't afford it. Then Paume pulls something out of his bag, and Debo is surprised to see that Paume has the money. Debo asks if that money is real. Paume says the contract is of 1 year, and the profit divide ratio is 7:3, and he'll have the priority from the gate drops. The handler is surprised as Paume is making the contract as a party member instead of a slave. Paume hands him the contract. Debo quickly snatches it, saying there is no taking it back. He bites at thumb and stamps the contract with his blood. Paume smiles and says we will be heading straight to a gate. With a serious expression, Paume says that Debo needs to prove his worth. Debo says that he will work harder than anyone he has seen before. The panel changes and we see them in a forest. Debo says, I am grateful that you bought me a weapon, but I use long sword, so we should change it. Paume replies that from now on he will be using a pole arm, and if he didn't like it they can end the contract. They went to a gate that has 1 scar and an entry limit of 8. Debo asks where rest of the party and the healer is. He says, if it's our boss with deep pockets, I'm sure there would be good party members. Paume just stares at him. Debo asks, could it be that there are not enough? Paume replies they have got more than enough members. Debo sighs out of relief, saying I got scared for no reason. Paume then points at Debo, and he goes back to being completely confused for a while. Then he shouts no way, and gets kicked into the dungeon. Debo screams while entering, and once they both enter, we see a rough terrain. Debo shouts, are you crazy? He says there are only 2 of them for an 8-man gate, and he has to use a weapon that he never used before. Paume says nothing and glares at him. Then Debo turns around to see smoke, as spider-like trees run towards them. They are called stumps. Debo realizes that he messed up by yelling, and readies his polearm. Paume tells him to move and comes in front of the horde of stumps. He casts fire arrow and instantly kills one. Debo gets surprised upon seeing this but watches as the fight is just getting started. Paume controls the fire arrow, wiping out the entire group of monsters. And when the last one dies, he says, it's disappointing how Debo acted, and says to not make such mistakes again. Debo, after watching Paume fight, he was like,
wait a minute! Who are you?
The scene shifts to nighttime. A woman says that the merchant union took the bait. And we are still working on the plan, but we've already managed to pick out the people we'll be sending. We see someone holding the wine, and the woman asks if they have his permission to continue. The man replies yes, and then the woman fades out. The man says everything will be done according to that man's will, and raises the glass towards the moon for a toast, saying freedom for the maple world.
In the last part we saw that Paume and Debo were in dungeon fighting the stumps, and Debo was shocked upon seeing how powerful Paume is. After defeating the horde of stumps, Debo says he is finished collecting the mana stones. Paume says time to go. They continue to go deeper in the dungeon. Debo self-talks that I thought he was just crazy, but he is incredibly talented. With a greedy face he says, if he is with Paume, he can make a lot of money, and save some expenses for living. They encounter another group of stumps. Debo hides, and counts that there are 8 to 9 monsters. Paume replies it's a perfect number. Debo seems to be confused by Paume's word and tries to ask him, but Paume just blankly stares at Debo. In the next panel we see that a stump is distracted by a falling stone, and at the same moment Debo ambushes the monster from above, killing it in a single strike. The other monsters rushes at Debo to attack him. Debo curses as he have to fight the monsters with a weapon he has never used before. Debo counterattacks while calling his boss crazy. Paume, while watching Debo fight, says it's obvious that he is not used to the weapon, but soon he will realize that the polearm is the weapon that'll make him strongest. There is no need to doubt his talent, since he was picked by Erin to be her student. A stump flies at Debo, but he chops him in half. He is surprised because the longer he fights, the more comfortable it feels. Now he smoothly begins to chop the stumps in half, one after another like a killing machine. Paume says he already got the hang of it. He hasn't awakened a circle yet, but already is this good. Debo then feels the ground shaking and wonders if it's an earthquake. We see the cliff shattering, and a giant stump's arm comes out. Debo dodges the attack. Debo is shocked at the sight of the monster, and we see a giant monster called Stumpy. It goes for another attack, but Paume quickly moves Debo out of the way, then throws him onto the ground. Paume says that the monster's size doesn't matter. If anything, it gets easier to hit, and he casts a fire arrow. Debo smiles, saying magic can work, but the Stumpy blocks the attack using its branches. Paume says it's faster than he thought, then using the telekinesis ring casts another fire arrow. It moves around the Stumpy and flies towards its blind spot, but to their surprise it gets blocked. Paume is surprised as he blocked that attack too. They start to run away from the Stumpy, as magic isn't working either. Paume says if attacks didn't work, then the monster had not blocked them. The problem are the branches. The monster's attack launches them into air, and it prepares for a follow-up. Paume activates his ring and pulls the ground up below them. They escape the monster's attack by surfing on the ground. Debo coughs and says thanks for saving him, but Paume cuts him off and asks him to take on the horde of the stumps, and he himself will take on the Stumpy. He leaps off towards the Stumpy, while casting another fire arrow, and launches it at the monster. Debo self-talks that Stumpy is not a monster they can beat without a plan, so they have to run for it. As Debo thought, the Stumpy blocks the attack, but we see that another fire arrow grazed the Stumpy. Debo is surprised by the attack. Paume prepares for a follow-up. He says the branches move faster than he thought, so it's impossible to use telekinesis to evade them and attack through the gaps at the same time. But since he is a second circle now, he can conjure magic twice. Then a fire arrow blows away some of the part of the Stumpy. Debo smiles and says it's incredible to hide another fire arrow behind the first one. It's very smart. And now the boss is helpless to those attacks. He says Paume is more of a monster than Debo thought. While Debo was lost in his thought, few of the stumps get past him, and they tries to attack Paume. Debo shouts to look out for them. Paume uses the fire arrow with telekinetic power and kills all of the stumps. Paume with a disappointed look asks Debo if he can't handle the little ones. The Stumpy laughs and takes this chance to attack him. Paume, being alert, dodges the attack by leaping backward into the air. Stumpy prepares for a follow-up, and as it was about to hit him, Debo pushes him down and cuts the branches off. He says that he just saved Paume, so Paume should take back about how he just blamed him. Paume smiles a little and says that now Debo finally seems useful, and he unleashed 2 fire arrows simultaneously. They both decide to attack the Stumpy together. While Debo runs up to the Stumpy, Paume launches both the fire arrow, hitting the first one and causing one off the branch to blow away. The second arrow swiftly followed, prompting the Stumpy to block it using its branch. Anticipating Stumpy's movements, Debo intercepted, leaping high and cutting the branch before it can deflect the fire arrow. Paume uses telekinesis to control the arrow directly hitting at the Stumpy. As Debo was suspended in midair, Stumpy tries to attack him from both sides. While casting Fire Arrow, Paume says that he will take care of the right branch. Debo laughs and says then he will take the left one. Their coordinated attack successfully pulls through. Debo didn't pause, he leaped off at the Stumpy, cutting off the other branches. Then one of the branches hits him in the gut, and he coughs up blood. As Debo was about to be eaten by the Stumpy, Paume made a rock fly towards him, rescuing Debo from the Stumpy. But the Stumpy attacks at the rock, breaking it into pieces. Paume says that it's getting troublesome and he uses telekinesis to fly several rocks at once. Debo lands on one of the rock, but Stumpy continues on attacking him. Debo grits his teeth as he does not seem to get away. He jumps off from one rock to another to dodge the Stumpy's attack. Paume uses the Fire Arrow to distract the Stumpy, using this as a chance. Debo comes flying from behind, hitting the Stumpy in the eye. It starts screeching with pain and starts shaking vigorously. Debo's grip got loose from the pole arm and he lands on one of the cliff. Debo with a determined look says it's not over and leaps off at the monster. Using his telekinesis, Paume pulls out the polearm from Stumpy's eye and delivers it to Debo. Debo with a fierce look says open up customer, it's time for dinner, and then he vertically struck the polearm into Stumpy's another eye, causing it to scream in agony. As its body thrashed, Debo lands on the ground. Stumpy tries to attack Debo, but from the back 2 Fire Arrow came flying and directly enters the Stumpy's mouth, hitting directly at its core, causing Stumpy to get toasted. As Debo witnessed the Stumpy get burned, Paume approaches him and says nice work. Debo while panting replies you too. Both stood by witnessing Stumpy get devoured by the flames. The scene shifts to nighttime. In a small house, a girl sat eating alone at the dining table. She starts to pray before eating the food, and suddenly she hears a knock on the door. She went to open it, asking who is there. However, she gets stunned upon seeing the person. We see Debo standing with a smile on his face and his body covered in blood. She tries to confirm if it's really her brother. When Debo says I'm back, her hands trembles and tears starts coming out of her eyes. She embraced Debo in her arms, welcoming him back home. The panel changes and we are shown a house in midst of forested area. Paume appeared before a relative in the room, however the body showed the signs of decay. It seems that the person had taken their last breath on the bed. It is revealed that it was none other than his father who had passed away. He gazed down at the body for a while, sadness evident on his face. Then he uses fire, burning everything to give off his final rites to his father, along with the home he had lived since birth. He walks away from the burning house, leaving his entire past behind and heading towards the future. The scene shifts to Abby sitting in his office, reading the documents on the upcoming 100-man gate. He wonders how should he organize this as Sir Rakan will be in charge of things this time, and if he makes a mistake it's going to be an issue. All the 10 major merchant unions will be focusing on clearing the gate. Epic or higher grade item is guaranteed in an 100-man gate. There could be a possibility of a legendary item too. However, given the circumstances it won't be easy, because the 3 Natasha sisters of the Goldrich Merchant Union are so powerful that it's hard to believe they are only 2 circle adventurers. It's to the point that the Gaffer Merchant Union's 2 circle adventurers cannot even be considered for comparison. If you were to break it down, not only the Goldrich Merchant Union but all the adventurers sent by the 10 major merchant union are cream of the crop. Our Gaffer Merchant Union is clearly outclassed by them all. While looking at Paume's file, Abby says he feels a bit hesitant. Suddenly, the office's door swung open abruptly. Abby asks who dares to open without knocking, but he gets shocked upon seeing the person. Upon seeing that it's none other than Sir Rakan, he almost had a heart attack. Mr. Rakan asks if Abby's has prepared the list of parties who are going to clear the gate. Abby's apologizes and says it's not. Rakan interrupted and says that it's unlike of him to be late. Then he asks what does Abby's think about the young friend from that time. Abby's responded that Paume has some room for consideration. He says that Paume is talented, but they have no way of knowing what had happened because last time, whole of the Chev's party was wiped out, and that is why he is skeptical about him. Hearing this, Rakan sighs, saying you and your skeptical nature. Then he asks how about you test him again. There just happens to be a good place, a place to test him. At the end he adds that Abby should gather all of the parties that he was considering. With a cunning smile on his face, Rakan says that there will be many witnesses this time. The scene shifts, and we see that Paume and Debo are in front of a red gate entrance, along with many other peoples. Debo exclaims and says, "It's look like there are many people going this time." A man approaches Paume and asks if they are the fifth party. Looking at Paume's party, the man with a disdainful expression says, "Two people with a slave background." Paume coldly ignores the man, thinking to himself that they are not obviously welcoming. Are they trying to say that slaves will just get in the way? I guess it's just normal for experienced adventurer to think that way. And by the looks of it, they are around 1 to 2 circle only. They are different from Chev's party. They are real pros who don't need any baits. At this moment, Abby suddenly appears and addresses everyone, saying everyone's here. He says, "I'll keep it short and will proceed with the test now. I will give a chance to those who show their abilities." The red headband man asks about the chance that Abby's is talking about. Abby smirked and says, "That's right, a chance to clear the 100-man gate." Everyone present got surprised by this information. Paume remained calm, pondering that's how Abby's is gonna play it. Then Abby sends them off into the dungeon after giving them good luck. After entering the gate, they exclaim as the terrain is forest again. The man with red headband suggests that they only gather for the boss hunt and asks if it's fine with everyone. Everyone agrees, and they split up in smaller groups, going in different directions. However, it seems like Paume and Debo were not invited into any group, and Debo felt a little dejected. One of the group was led by a magician named Dolan. He declares that they will kill everything in their path, since they don't have much time, and the group agrees to it. Suddenly a monster catches Dolan's attention. He complained that it was only one monster, and uses the magic, casting energy bolt striking directly at the monster. With a boring expression, he asks his party to pick up the mana stone so that they can move quickly. After the smoke gets cleared, it is revealed that the monster is not dead. Dolan gets shocked upon seeing this, and wonders if the monster is sturdy enough to withstand his magic. Then he notices something and alerts the rest of the party members. We see that they are surrounded by dozens of mushroom-like monsters. After a long and relentless battle with the monsters, Dolan's group was able to kill all of them. They were panting heavily due to the long battle. Then one of the party members asks Dolan that the monsters are sturdier than they imagined, and asks what should they do now. Dolan anxiously says that winning with kill count is impossible now, because at this rate they will run out of the stamina before they can do anything. He made a change in his plans, and orders everyone that they will break the alliance and go for the boss hunt. Paume already guessed that all the groups will go for the boss directly, and calmly explains Debo that's what they are thinking. But unlike Paume, Debo was heavily exhausted due to the battle with monsters. He remarks, "That's most likely the case, but forget that." He asks why is Paume just standing there without helping him out. Paume coldly replies that there were only 3 monsters, so he should be able to take care of it. Debo feels little uneasy, then he asks if Paume is trying to say that they don't have time to waste like this. Paume replies, "Yeah, let's go." Then both spoke simultaneously. Debo with determination says to kill the boss monster, while Paume says something completely different, to wipe out all the trash mobs. Debo, puzzled, asks didn't he just say that he'll go for the boss? Paume replies, "I said what others are probably thinking. We'll just go with the numbers." Killing the boss monster isn't the only way to get a good score. The way you deal with trash is also important. Besides, the boss is dangerous and the competition will be fierce. And we don't know what trick other teams might pull. Debo, while acting childish, thinks to himself that Paume always talks like he knows everything. Paume then added that he can sense something perilous about this gate. Returning to Dolan's group, a woman points at something, asking Sir Dolan to take a look at it. Dolan observes and then replies that it's an escape gate, and says that it's good that they already encountered it. He gives instruction to leave marking from here on out. Meanwhile, one member of group started laughing uncontrollably. Dolan worriedly asks, what's wrong with him, calling by his name of Ant. He says that he is too loud. But he continued laughing. Dolan, annoyed, grabs him by shoulder and says that he will attract the surrounding monsters. Upon seeing Avant's creepy face, Dolan gets shocked, not knowing what was happening. Suddenly the surroundings get filled with purplish smoke, and then everyone starts laughing uncontrollably. Dolan came to a conclusion that it's poisonous gas. He says he have to get out of here even if he is the only one to escape, and quickly starts to run out of that area. Suddenly a huge mushroom-like monster appeared, laughing creepily, and he stood behind Dolan, while all of his holes were releasing the poisonous gas that induced laughter. The dense gas seemed unbearable for Dolan. He succumbs to the poisonous gas and he also started laughing like crazy while looking at the monster. The panel shifts, and they are traversing through a river flowing between the tall cliffs. Debo, annoyed, says to himself that Paume didn't even fight once since they entered the gate. Then he notices something up in the sky, and both of them looks up, confirming that it's a signal flare. After a while they arrive at a place where rest of the parties are gathered. Debo excitedly says that they are supposed to send a signal flare if they were to find Boss Mob, but them actually doing it is really surprising. Paume looks around and notices that one party is missing. The man with red headband says that since everyone is here, he'll start explaining. A purple-haired lady interrupts, saying that Magician Dolan's party is missing. Ignoring her, the man continues the explanation. He says that they have found the boss monster, and when they did, they also witnessed Dolan's party getting completely wiped out by that very same boss mob, called the Mad Poisonous Mushroom. Let's call him Matty. The lady gets shocked upon knowing who the boss mob is, and says that they are in trouble, because they are in no condition to face the Matty. People, while freaking out, start to chatter among themselves, saying that they might have to give up on hunting the boss and find an escape gate first. Debo, puzzled, asks Paume if the Matty is that much dangerous. Ignoring Debo's question, Paume sinks into his own thoughts. He thinks that Matty is the worst type of boss to run into at their current level. While Paume is strategizing how to counter the monster, Debo continues to call out to him, and gets annoyed because Paume is ignoring him. The red headband man tells everyone that Matty is in the way of escape gate, and it's impossible to escape without facing it. Debo proudly says that Matty is nothing, with just one fire arrow his boss can. Paume interrupts Debo and coldly asks him to shut up. Debo gets annoyed at Paume's cold behavior and curses him. Paume says that they will die if they face Matty without any plans, and his fire arrow wouldn't even scathe it. Debo gets shocked upon hearing this and questions the reason. Paume replies that even the regular mobs in this gate are sturdy and all tanky, so it's a given that the Matty is as well. The red headband man sighs and says that Paume is stating something obvious. A man calls him Iburu and says that this is not the time for that. They need to figure out a way. Paume raises his hand and says 50,000 mesos. Iburu, confused, asks about what Paume is saying. Paume explains that 50,000 per person, and since there are 30 people they have to pay 1.5 million mesos. If they do that, Paume declares that he and Debo will act as a bait for them. Debo is surprised upon Paume's declaration. Upon hearing Paume's proposition there is silence for a moment, and then Debo frustratingly pulls out his hair, cursing Debo in his mind for such a proposition. Iburu, seemingly angry, shouts and says that they must still be used to their slave tactics, but things are not same every time. Matty is not a boss to get baited so easily. If they were to go along what Paume said, and Paume and Debo fail to bait the boss, they will all die along with them. He points at Debo and shouts that putting Paume aside, Debo looks like he hasn't even awakened yet. What can they do with a two-circle adventurer and a slave? Debo, visibly angry, curses them in his mind and says that they are trying to pick a fight since earlier. Paume remains calm and asks if he have a better plan. Iburu get flustered and was not able to answer. Paume says you don't have a plan, right, and if you had one, then you wouldn't have fired the signal flare. Also, let me clear something up. He says that his party consists of 1 2-circle and 1 1-circle. Debo was surprised and looks at his hand, finding out that he is now a 1-circle adventurer. His reaction was like, Paume says that Iburu's party have only 1 or 2 2-circle adventurers, right? Iburu hesitates to answer. Then the purple-haired woman interrupts, asking Paume to wait. She says that if they act as bait, she is willing to pay. However, their party didn't have such a large sum on them right now. Paume replies, that's not a problem. He'll collect the amount when they get out of the gate, and if they were not able to make it out, then they will just become sacrifices. However, Paume puts a condition that everyone present here should agree to the proposition, and gives them time to decide to what they'll do. The scene shifts to where the escape gate is. Next to the gate, Matty was devouring the bodies of unlucky Dolan's group. Suddenly a fire arrow came flying towards Matty, hitting directly at its face. Immediately after the strike, Matty's body reflexively emitted poisonous smoke enveloping the surrounding area. Paume and Debo appeared nearby wearing a face mask. Paume reminds Debo that they'll move when the boss notices them. Before they can converse further, the monster's red eyes menacingly gazes at them from the smoke. In an instant it charges towards them. Debo asks anxiously why Matty is so fast. As Matty was about to catch up, they both start running to lure it away. Simultaneously, the rest of the group hurried towards the escape gate. The woman urged to activate the portal, and one of the members activate the portal by touching the pillar, while the rest of the party escaped through it. However, the monster was relentlessly pursuing Debo and Paume. Suddenly, a pack of small mushroom monsters attack them from front. Debo finds it annoying and shouts if he looks that easy to the monsters. He swung around his polearm covered in aura and unleashed an attack called Slash Blust, killing all the mushroom monsters at once. While he was distracted by small mushrooms, Maddie jumps at Debo to take a bite out of him. But Paume quickly casts Fire Arrow, saving Debo from the onslaught. Although the monster was struck directly, it took little to no damage, but it becomes more furious. Paume shots another Fire Arrow at Maddie, but he dodges it this time. Paume then uses telekinesis to control the Fire Arrow and directs it towards Maddie. The boss, enraged, continues to chase them, dodging and ducking all of the Fire Arrows cast by Paume. Debo, anxious, warns Paume that the monster is catching up to them. Paume notices a gap between the mountains and asks Debo to jump into the gap. The monster attempts to attack them, but was unable to do so. While falling, Debo taunted Maddie by flipping the bird at him, and Paume casts another Fire Arrow, striking Maddie and causing a big explosion. They narrowly escape Maddie's clutches by falling into the flowing river. After some time, they finally reach the shore. Debo, while panting, curses Maddie. Because he almost died, he asks, "Just what is that thing?" Paume replies, "Didn't you hear? He was the boss of this place, and it looks like they need to prepare better if they want to kill it." Debo was baffled at Paume's intention. He sarcastically says that Paume is talking as if we are really going to kill that thing. Paume confirms that he heard it correctly. Infuriated, Debo says, "Are you kidding me?" Debo thinks to himself that since they have done their role as bait, shouldn't they escape? How are they going to defeat it if none of the attacks are working on Maddie? Paume says, since the competition is all gone, it's like a free meal, and they are getting a bonus on top of that. Paume questions Debo's hesitation, asking if he is going to violate their contract. Debo hesitated a little, then he says that he was not thinking about that, but he should get a bonus for doing this. Paume smiles and assures him. Then Debo asks Paume, how are they going to kill Maddie, as melee and ranged attack don't even work on him? He questioningly asks that if there is even a way to kill that thing. Paume remained composed while looking at Debo. The scene shifts to rest of the party members who are coming out of the gate. Abby says it's a 40-man gate. Isn't it too quick for them to come out? Abby asks the lady, how did the gate go, and it seems like few of them are missing. The lady replies that they failed to clear it. While panting, she says that Dolan's party was wiped out and Paume is still inside, and they were only able to escape because Paume's party has acted as a bait for them. She says that the boss of this gate is impossible for them to take out alone. Abby stands silent for a while. He couldn't control his anger and demanded an explanation, as they did nothing and just ran with their tails between their legs. The lady replies that the boss was infamous mad poisonous mushroom, and there was nothing they could do. Abby throws his cigar in anger, and then turns away, instructing all the adventurers to head back. She requests Abby to wait. She says that Paume is still inside, and seeing that the gate is active, they must still be alive. Abby's coldly responded that they won't survive, it is only a matter of time. He says that, didn't she herself said that the boss is mad poisonous mushroom? If they want to wait, they can wait for themselves. He don't have time for this. After saying this, he walks away. Abby thinks to himself and calls them useless bastards. He says that they were just unlucky. A two-circle killing Maddie is impossible, and that is a given. And he don't want average adventurers like that. What he wants is the type who can overcome such things. Returning inside the gate, Maddie is still relentlessly trying to search for Paume and Debo, continuously emitting poisonous smoke wherever it goes. We see Paume standing on a high cliff, casting Fire Arrow while pointing it in the direction of Maddie. With a determined look, he is ready to face Maddie, and he says, let the hunt begin. Immediately after this declaration, Paume launches the Fire Arrow at Maddie from a very long distance. Paume explains that Maddie is faster and sturdier than the ones they had faced before, and its poisonous smoke makes it a pain in the ass. It's better to keep their distance and attack with an overwhelming ranged attack. However, at his current level, he is not able to achieve that level with the Fire Arrow he currently conjures. He uses telekinesis to spin and rotate the Fire Arrow at a very high speed, which will drastically increase its piercing power. And this is something only Paume can do in the Maple world. It's something he came up when he thought of a bullet, a skill that makes impossible, possible. Paume named the spinning fire arrow skill as revolver. It reaches Maddie with lightning speed, and by the time he was able to notice it, the revolver already hit him in the chest. With accumulated speed and power, it continues drilling in Maddie's chest, penetrating the chest of Mushroom Boss. It screams in agony. Paume says that he was aiming for the head, but he slightly missed it. This has become more troublesome, because Maddie pinpoints Paume's location and starts running towards him. Meanwhile, Paume had already prepared another revolver. He fired it at Maddie, but unfortunately it misses. Paume remarks that it's hard to hit Maddie while he is moving, and the main problem is its cooldown. Paume says that he have to defeat it before Maddie can get up to him, and fires another revolver, but it also misses. Debo took cover beside a tree nearby. As the boss closed in, Paume signaled Debo to do it now. Debo shouts as he pulls the rope tight. Maddie, unbailed to see the rope, falls into their trap. It stumbled upon the rope, falling into the pool of mud. It tries to stood up from the slippery mess. Paume stood on top of the cliff, confirming the execution of the plan. Maddie, enraged, looks up to Paume helplessly. At the same time, Debo's polearm, enveloped in his aura, came flying at Maddie and struck at his face, causing a significant damage. Debo pulls back his polearm with the help of the rope. Maddie tries to release the toxic smoke, but the spore get blocked due to the mud filling in them. Facing Maddie, Debo smirked confidently and taunted it to attack him. Paume stood looking down at the monster. He says that condition have been met, as the objective of this trap was to nullify the monster's strength, and they succeeded in doing so as Maddie's spores gets clogged due to the mud. Debo with a determined look taunts Maddie, and then swung around, his polearm tied from the rope, enveloped in the aura, and it directly hits Maddie, causing him to bleed. Then Debo unleashed an onslaught on Maddie, giving him a significant amount of damage. Maddie then parries one of the attack and rushes to attack Debo, but he noticed that he is stuck in the mud, because the muddy swamp is the worst place for fast monsters like Maddie. Paume fires another revolver, striking directly at Maddie. The revolver with a high speed damages Maddie and he gets shoved into the swamp. Debo wonders if it is dead, but its shadow is visible through the smoke. Debo curses because Maddie is so sturdy. Then Paume shouts, instructing Debo to aim for Maddie's head, as its core must be near it. Debo swings his polearm while replying that he already know where the core is. As the polearm reaches in the range of Maddie, he catches it and pulls the rope, swinging Debo along with it. Paume uses telekinesis, aiming a tree trunk at Maddie. While the trunk hits Maddie in his face, Debo holds onto the trunk and swings around, kicking Maddie and then landing far away from it. With a determined look, Debo leaps off again to attack Maddie. He runs around to distract it, and Paume uses telekinesis, causing the swamp water to rise, blocking Maddie's field of vision. Maddie, unable to see clearly, tries to attack Debo's shadow camouflaged in swamp water, but then it is revealed that Debo is not there. Debo comes from behind, swinging his polearm enveloped in aura, slicing off Maddie's head from its body. Its body remained in standing position, while its head fall into the swamp. Debo, while panting, gives Paume sign of victory. Paume smiles at Debo's performance. But to Paume's dismay, Maddie comes behind Debo, striking directly at his head, shoving him into the swamp. Maddie screeches horribly. Paume, still in disbelief, casts a fire arrow aiming at Maddie. But Maddie dodges it, and quickly starts running towards Paume. Paume wonders if he missed something. He uses telekinesis and lifts Maddie up in the air in hope to make him fall to the ground. But to his surprise, Maddie lunges and hangs onto the cliff, climbing up to Paume. Paume worries because he only has enough mana for one attack and there is no nest time. Debo, while cursing, rises from the swamp. With a bloody face, he says that Maddie is pissing him off. He unleashes his attack /blust at Maddie, cutting its lower half of the body. Debo laughs and says take that, but to his surprise, Maddie continues climbing up to Paume. Debo shouts to Paume that it's dangerous, while Paume casts another fire arrow, but Maddie dodges the attack. And then we see that inside Maddie's body there is another creepy monster screeching horribly. Paume, with a calm demeanor, while holding the flare gun, asks if that black thing is its real head. Debo was surprised, as the last attack was a bluff attack shot by the flare gun and not a fire arrow. Then Paume readies his staff, casting another revolver, striking directly at Maddie. As Maddie screeches, the revolver pierces its real head, and it falls onto the ground with a loud crash. The poisonous smoke starts enveloping the surrounding area. Debo curses while saying that Maddie is being a pain till the end. Controlling the rope with telekinesis, Paume pulls Debo away from the toxic smoke. Upon reaching on top of the cliff, Debo sighs out of relief, and then they both look down as the smoke spreads in the area. Debo asks if Maddie is really dead. Paume replies in affirmative. And then he praises Debo for his hard work. While he was instructing Debo to grab Maddie's mana stone, a figure jumps off to the sky. Paume gets shocked upon seeing it, and we see that Maddie is in the air releasing the smoke, having several holes in his body. As Paume and Debo looks up, its mana stone begins to shine brightly. Debo starts smiling like a madman, and my honest reaction to Maddie was,
I don't believe this! Asampav!
The scene shifts to where Abby's and Rakan are. Rakan laughs, and asks if Abby's just came back just like that. He says that Abby's temper is same as ever. Abby's nervously sweating, apologizes for the matter. He says that they should let Cygnus Knights, but he gets interrupted by a knock on the door. Abby shouts, and says that he asked not to be disturbed. But the person swung open the door while saying I'm coming in. Upon seeing the person, Abby's remained speechless. We see that the person who entered is none other than Paume, covered in dirt and monster blood. He says I'm back. Rakan laughs cunningly and says that this is getting interesting.
And now, folks, it's time to say goodnight. We sincerely appreciate your patronage and hope we've succeeded in bringing you an enjoyable evening of entertainment. Please drive home carefully and come back again soon.